group which is dedicated to electing more Democrats in Linn County. We have a nice holiday. As far as electeds, I know Ashley Marnie here is here from the City Council. Oxley is running for the State Senate. Eric Jurdy is in the State House. Formers, but we're not going to list all you guys. Yeah. All right. So thanks to all of you for coming, and thanks to all of you for coming. Tonight's event is our first since the pandemic, where we're charging non-members to be here, and we always encourage everyone to become a member if you can over time. Through those membership dues and fees, we raise money to help the Blue Team win in important Linn County races where we feel like our help can truly make the deciding difference. So we're coming out of the most damaging session that I've seen in my time following Iowa politics, and we just simply can't let Republicans continue their destructive one-party rule any longer. So now we have a chance to take it all back from them next year, but it's going to take everything we have in us. That includes talking to our friends and neighbors, working for campaigns we believe in, and donating money to them. Money alone may not win races, but you can't run them without it. So I'm asking you, if you care about the direction of our state, we sincerely hope you'll consider joining Linn Phoenix Club and donating to candidates of your choice as you see fit. Now I'd like to ask Nate Williams to introduce our speaker.
Thanks, Mike. I'm going to introduce Rob in just a minute, but this is the first time we've had a Phoenix Club event here at this particular venue in Bever Park, and this is actually perfect. Thanks, Mike. This is a great choice. I suppose we should all just reflect for a moment. Being able to have our event here at a city park, that we should be appreciative that the city has allowed, the event to be used for a partisan political
Good one.
So, I just want to tell you a couple things real quick about Rob Sand, some of which you already may know. Rob is from Decorah. He's an Iowa kid, born and raised in Decorah. I've got a soft spot, at least in my heart, for people from a small town in Iowa who, when they're 18, leave Iowa to go to the East Coast, get a world-class education, and then decide, Boston may be nice, New York may be nice, DC may be nice, but they want to move home to Iowa to plant their roots. And if they're half Norwegian, that's even better. But Rob obviously came back to Iowa, went to law school at Iowa, the University of Iowa, became a prosecutor, was in the Attorney General's office, some high-profile white-collar prosecutions, and then became, the first Democrat elected State Auditor that anybody can remember. On the same night where Fred Hummel, who ran a great race, got 48 or 49%, Rob was able to get about 51 or 52%. And as you know, when you get 51 or 52%, you win. And anyway, Rob's race and profile in the State Auditor's office, and probably now is more important than ever. I mean, I don't think you guys, Eric, you guys probably can't get the House Government Oversight Committee to hold a meaningful meeting about anything with what this administration does. The only place anybody has, only thing to hold the Governor Reynolds administration accountable is the State Auditor's office right now, and we're very appreciative of the work he's done there. Some of you may have questions about Rob's future, and I can confidently report to you that Rob's future is very bright. Beyond that, he'll figure stuff out, and I'm sure have a good plan for what he wants to do moving forward. Anyway, one last thing is that, Rob Sand is a good guy from a small town in Iowa. When he comes to an event like this, he's on time and he comes with his mother.
I was joking on some of the, I'm working on my 99 county tour. We're actually doing a 100 county seat tour. You didn't know Lee County has 2 county seats. So we're taking what everybody else says and saying, oh yeah? Watch this. And we're one-upping them. So I'm working on my 100 county seat tour, and I was saying earlier to the independents, I realized that I have an age problem. That nobody believes I'm 38. And I know that it's worse when my mom is my driver. But I don't care because I love my mom. Changing the formula. Honestly, it's a really nice way to get some quality time in with her. Part of the time when we're driving around, I'm checking my email, I'm sending emails, I might be on the phone, but we still have opportunities to have some good quality time and some good conversation too. And 2 weeks ago, I had my dad out driving around, because why not? Our boys are almost 5 and 7, and there are a lot of times where I feel like I haven't had quality conversation with my parents for 7 years. Because I sit down and I try to start talking to them, and somebody comes over and hits me in the stomach. Or starts screaming at their sibling, and it drives me crazy. And so to have her come with is fun, especially because she is a native Cedar Rapids. And so it's always fun for her to come with. So thanks for having me. Thanks for always remembering that I'm 38 and only getting older, not getting younger. And thanks for coming out tonight. I don't really have anything prepared. I don't really know what I want to say to this group in particular. I've been going around talking to groups of the general public. Today, it's what I'm going to do tomorrow. We, unlike some people, provide public notice in advance when we're doing town hall meetings, because we're not scared to talk to anybody. I would like people to come out and be willing to have a conversation. You might assume that they're going to disagree with me, because that's what we need to be doing right now. If there's one thing we need to be doing right now, it's actually trying to do something to cut across partisanship and cut across the divides that are in front of us. That so often fundamentally are manufactured by people who want us to be divided from each other, because then we're easier to control. Right? I know I'm a Democrat. Everybody knows I'm a Democrat. And I know I'm speaking to a group of Democrats. But we are so much more than that. Every one of us as individuals, we're so much more than that collectively. And I know this is a group that's very supportive of Democratic candidates and Democratic causes. And I'm happy with that, right? In general, because that's the party that I tend to agree with. The biggest problem that's in front of us is an unwillingness to solve problems because of partisanship. We can have lots of conversations about this. There's lots of things to say about it. When I first registered to vote, I was an independent. And then I figured out that in order for me to legally vote twice in one election cycle, I needed to be able to vote in a primary and had to pick my poison, right? At the end of the day, though, I know that when you're supporting Democrats, it's because the causes that you agree with them on, right? It's because you generally say, well, they stand for these things and those are the things that I appreciate. It's not just because they've got the D behind their name. And I registered as a Democrat because I said, well, that's the party that cares about everybody. That's the party that cares about working folks. That's the party that cares about having a clean environment. So whether you just want to think about it or you want to be out there hunting and fishing the way I do, it's still a good thing to have, right? That's the party that's concerned with making sure that everybody gets a fair shake. And so, you know, pick my poison. But still, at the end of the day, it is kind of that, isn't it? There's so many times where people get distracted by that and let that overtake the fundamental issue that we are supposed to be doing here in this whole adventure called self-governance. And that is governing ourselves. We have to do it collectively, right? That's what government is for, but it also requires that we each do it individually. You can't really have self-governance with people who refuse to govern themselves, personally. And I think that is one of the biggest drivers right now of where we find ourselves in terms of partisanship, is people who we can't find a way to hit the brakes, right? It's hard. How many of you are on social media? Raise your hand, Ashley. So many of us are on there and yet have a hard time finding our way to interact with people in a way that is human, right? We're not designed to do it. Human beings are not meant to interact with each other through computers. Think of all the things, if you are married, that you do not say to your spouse. If you're not married, think of all the things that you do not say to your coworkers. And a lot of times, if I go to bed that night and I haven't said that thing to my spouse, I wake up the next morning and I think, I'm really glad that I didn't say that to my spouse. Today is a new day. It wasn't that important. It didn't need to be said. But when we're sitting in front of a computer, what do? We say it, right? We put on the caps lock and let them fly. And the problem with that is we just make each other angrier and angrier and angrier and angrier. The bile rises in our throats and the hate rises in our hearts, and we drive each other further apart from each other. And if we're not the ones typing it, then we're the ones reading it because somebody else is doing it. And it kind of feels the same, doesn't it? It kind of feels the same. And I'm not going to stand up here and tell you that I know exactly what the answer is. I don't think there's only one answer. I think there's a lot of answers to it. I think there's a lot of things that we have to do to fix where we are right now. And I'll tell you this, it's not that there's kumbaya at the end of the rainbow, right? We're always going to have disagreements about public policy. But we need to get back to a world where there's more than two ways to think. Where you don't have to say, well, I'm red and you're blue, and so we disagree on everything. Oh, what do you think about this? Which team are you cheering for? Okay, I'll cheer for the other one. You know? And yet that's where we find ourselves. And I think when we look at that, right, there are different times historically for either party. We're at a time where we specifically are dealing with an incredible rush of misinformation and disinformation that makes it worse. And it's driven again by people who want us to be divided, right? Think about this, like at the end of the day, we're supposed to be a team. That's what we're supposed to be. That's what we should be aspiring to be. How many championship teams just hate each other and go at each other's throats all the time? None. When all this got set up, we had checks and balances, right? Branches of government. And it was this great idea, according to a lot of people now, as well as the people who did it at the time, because they had lived under a world where one guy had all the power. And they saw what that became. And they didn't like it. It wasn't very good. But everybody who set that up, George Washington, John Adams, you name it, every one of them said, watch out for partisanship. John Adams said the greatest evil possible under this Constitution is two great parties united only in their opposition to each other. Close to where it seems like close to where we are right now. The only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is how much they hate each other. It's not healthy. It doesn't help us solve problems. Think about 4 generations from now. What people are going to have to say about how we conducted ourselves at this point in history. Now, I know sometimes it can feel like I'm preaching to the choir. Maybe these aren't the people I need to say this to. But there's a fundamental truth that really resonates with me, which is pick out the beam in your own eye before you point out the speck in your neighbor's. That's what saying is. I'm not saying that we are doing worse than the quote-unquote other side, right? What I'm saying is, what can we control? What can we influence? What can we impact? The easiest way to control or to influence or impact what other people do is by controlling and influencing and impacting what we do. The way we treat other people, the regard that we have for other people, the concern that we have for other people, the respect that we have for the lives that they have lived and shaped, or that have been shaped for them. And as soon as we get ourselves to a point where we are listening more than we're judging, we're going to do a better job of being advocates for the things that we believe in. Raise your hand if you can remember a time when somebody convinced you you were wrong by berating you. Not super effective, guys. Not super effective. Hard to avoid sometimes. Feels good to do it maybe. But what are we really doing it for? If we got something in us that we need to get out, we can talk to a friend that doesn't need the convincing, that can commiserate with us, right? But if we're talking something that needs a convincing, we ought to do it in a way that's actually going to be convincing. We're trying to reach out. We're trying to explain to people why we hold the views that we have. We've got to do it in a way that acknowledges their humanity, that acknowledges their ability to think for themselves, that acknowledges the fact that regardless of their education level, their experience is a great teacher too. And that where they were raised and the family that they were raised in that we probably know nothing about has shaped and influenced the thoughts that are easier for them to have than other thoughts and the thoughts that are harder for them to have than other thoughts. But if we don't do that, we're not going to reach them. We're not going to find the ability to get them to think about what we're thinking about and see it in a new light. I remember going to a movie when I was in college with my girlfriend at the time. And at the time, I detested previews. My attitude at the time was, I came here to see this movie. Don't try to sell me your other movie. I don't want to come see your other movie. I just want to see the movie I came to see. Show me the movie I came to see. And she said, just think of them as warnings. And I was like, interesting. Like little samplers, you know, appetizers. I actually now, on a fairly regular basis, go to the Apple Trailers website just to watch movies. But it's not. But it's because the suggestion that was made to me was made in a way that was not dismissive of my previous belief, right? Yes. It acknowledged. It didn't even attack it. Didn't say that I was wrong to think of them as commercials, because they're still commercials. It just put a little twist on it to say, think about it differently. Think about it this way instead. And I still do to this day. I wasn't told that I was wrong. I wasn't attacked in any way. It was just suggested that there was a different way to think about it, and I still think about it that way today. It's not easy for everybody to do this, right? It's maybe easiest for people like me to do this. It's still what I believe in. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to do it the same way that I do it. It doesn't mean everybody has to do it. Different rules, same goals. Sometimes it's useful to have somebody shouting so the person who's just speaking sounds more reasonable, even if they're saying the same thing. Okay? So if it feels like I am putting upon you tonight, I am not. I'm not putting upon you personally. I'm just talking about where we are collectively and where I think we need to be. That's the heart of it. That to me is the thing that is driving so much anger and angst in so many people. You know, the biggest political belief in this country is not belief in your own party, but anger and hatred of the other party. Anti-partisanship is actually a substantially bigger driver of people's political views than partisanship. It's not so much that the Republicans love the Republican Party, they just really hate the Democrats. Think about this. In 2016, what did every single establishment candidate tell Republican primary goers about Donald Trump? Right? watch out for that guy. He's bad news. Jeb Bush said it. Lindsey Graham said it. If we nominate Trump, we will be destroyed and we deserve it, right? Marco Rubio said it. Every leader of their party lined up in universal scorn for Donald Trump. And what did the hardest core supporters of their own party take that as a cue to do? Support him! Support him! They were never in love with the Republican Party. They still aren't. They were just appreciative of the guy that the people who they never really were convinced were serving them anyway agreed that was bad news. Right? That didn't really come out the clearest way out of my mouth right now. But this is what I'm trying to say, right? People are more open-minded than we give them credit for. People are less in love with our divided system than we assume. But they're fundamentally presented with the same stupid choices that we are. Pretending that there's two ways to think. How many people we got here tonight? 35? There's 35 ways to think just right here under this shelter tonight. And yet we push everybody into a system where we say pick one or the other, you know? And so that's what we all do, we pick one or the other. But at the end of the day, we know that we can do better than that. We can't solve this problem if we aren't open-minded about it. And we can't solve this problem if we don't consider the fact that there are people out there who may have voted for people that we detest, but who actually, if we would sit down and talk to for half an hour on a night like tonight, we'd sooner or later say, oh, yeah, me too. Oh, I think that too, right? The fundamental problem with it is not people. Let me be clear, people are problematic. Again, there's no utopia at the end of the rainbow, okay? We are always going to have our own troubles. But the biggest driver isn't people. It's a system that divides us into two ways of thinking and then seeks to continue to divide us through fear and through anger to maintain power over us. To put us into neat little camps and then orchestrate those neat little camps and take another percent over here and another percent over there to build just enough of a coalition to get there, right? God forbid they do anything that's more broadly appealing. I've been going for a little while now. I think I've made my point. If there's any point that I have to make tonight, here, today, that's it. That's fundamentally where I am. And I don't know what I'm doing in 2022, so we can short-circuit that conversation. But whatever I'm doing, wherever I'm going, whatever I'm running for, everything you just heard is what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter what the office is, because that to me is the fundamental truth of where we are and the fundamental truth of where we go. I haven't taken any questions. Yes?
Are you considering any political positions, like running for governor or anything like that?
Yes. Next question. Just kidding, I can't be that way. Look, I don't want to run for United States Senate. People tell me not to talk about process, especially when there's media around, but Jim, I'm just going to tell you anyways. Why would I want to go be a U.S. Senator when there's really only like 3 U.S. Senators that matter anyway? Seriously. Have you thought about that? The worst thing that I could possibly do in my life right now with a nearly 5-year-old and a 7-year-old is go be like the 49th Democratic Senator or like the 54th Democratic Senator. If I was one in that sweet spot right there, I'd be like, okay, my life, the sacrifices I'm making for my family, they have a purpose, right? They have a purpose. I am here and I am making a difference. But if I'm the 48th, or if I'm like the 56th, I'm not making a difference here. Who cares? Washington is so broken that it doesn't matter who you send. You guys remember Lamar Alexander?
No.
Senator from Tennessee. Tennessee is where Nashville is. Nashville's got the Grand Ole Opry. I don't read a lot about things that happen in D.C., but he was retired and one line got clipped as like a quote of the day or whatever, and I saw it. And Lamar Alexander from the state of Tennessee said that Washington these days is like getting invited to the Grand Ole Opry, but no one's allowed to sing. You have all these people that are supposed to be so talented and supposed to be so good at everything, and they don't get to do anything. right? They just stand there and like, well, I guess we're in the minority, so we're stuck doing nothing. Why would I want to do that when I got little kids at home who want to have somebody as their dad, right? And I want to be their dad. So I don't want to do that. Great job title, who cares? What are you here for? What are we here for? I mean, if you're here for a job title, I guess go ahead, but I'm here to make a difference. And I would rather run for re-election and serve another term as state auditor and be a dad to my kids than to go be a U.S. Senator. So, not that. Either re-election or governor, because those are two jobs where I know I can make a difference, right? And I can be a dad. And that might be all I have to say about that, but I bet someone's going to ask me and I'm going to keep yeah.
Rob, as you're going around Iowa, what are you hearing in these town hall meetings? What are a lot of the folks saying?
You would be very surprised at the number of people at the local level from both parties who are frustrated with what's happening in Des Moines. Specifically, the number of people who feel that they are outsiders to what happens there, and who feel that even though their party, right, Republicans are controlling it, they're doing things that aren't helping them, right? Look at a great example, talking to Republican county auditor after Republican county auditor. And typically my practice is, I take questions. I show up and I say, look, I can yammer at you if you don't have questions, but I get lots of opportunities to yammer at people. And you here in Independence or Grundy Center, where I was earlier today, you don't have a lot of opportunities to ask questions of elected officials, and so I want to prioritize your questions. And then they ask them and I answer them. And I have a lot of people who bring up the new voting restrictions, specifically county auditors. County auditors who say, with the window that we have at this point for absentee ballots and the slowdown of first-class mail in the United States of America, I don't know if I can send these ballots out and get them turned around and get them back in time, right? Because the other change that they made is now it has to be in the hands of the county auditor on election day. And they're frustrated with that. You know what we have at the local level? We got a lot of really good people who might be Republicans or Democrats, but they don't necessarily run that way and they don't work that way. They're trying to do a good job. Who was I talking to? I was talking to somebody who was in a county and they said, you know, my mom is one of the biggest, this is a smaller county, my mom was one of the biggest Democrats in the county, and the county auditor drove out to give her her ballot and waited for her to fill it out and brought it back again to the office. That is the kind of respect for democracy that we need right now. And we see it from local elected officials before partisanship infects them, right? Because at the local level, it's just about taking care of the people you live with. The county auditor knew this guy's mom. Knew she was a big Democrat, didn't care. Knew what the rules of the game were, prioritized the rules of the game over power for their own party, right? But then the further you get from the people you're supposed to be representing, the easier it is to stop thinking about them and start thinking about yourself. Or start thinking about your party. And I've talked to a lot of people who are very frustrated with things that the Republican Party has done that are not conservative, right? That are just about serving insiders instead of serving outsiders. That beyond anything else is the thing that is stuck out to me more. I hear a ton about the American Rescue Plan, but that's sort of an obvious answer, right, to some degree. Because there's a lot of money coming, a lot of it's going to the local level. A lot of those people who are handling that money have never had that kind of money to handle before. They're like, what do I do with this? I don't want to screw it up, right? How do we handle this? And so they ask me a lot of questions. I try to answer them. But that's one of the neat things, I think, too, about the American Rescue Plan compared to the CARES Act. To get that money to the local level, to cities and the counties, instead of just giving it all to the state. And what did we get when we gave it to the state? $20 million for Workday? For a computer software program? Yeah, I mean, it's just ridiculous. But you give it to people at the local level, and they just say, well, what can we do with this? What's allowable? And then what should we do with this? From all the things that we can do, what are the best things that we can do in our community? And they know that there's more accountability for them, right? Number one, they got to look at the people they're supposed to take taken care of. Number two, those people know where to find that very easily, right? And that helps too. Yes?
What have you been most proud of, and what have you decided was the least thing that you have done so far in your term?
Good question. The one thing that just absolutely clinched it for me in the decision to run for state auditor was learning that under Iowa law, the auditor's office can promote efficiency systemically across government at every level in Iowa, and then realizing that it wasn't. I was like, holy cow, what a cool opportunity. I've been doing criminal prosecution at the Attorney General's office. Do you know who wins in criminal prosecution? Nobody. I mean, genuinely nobody. You get the right result out of a case, the victim's not happy, the defendant's not happy. It's just ugliness. Everything that you do, you get up every day and you just think about sin and darkness and the worst things that people can do to each other. And I was really at a point. I remember I actually had this moment where I was talking to someone and we were describing ourselves to each other. And I said, I'm a happy, optimistic person, because that's what I've always said throughout my life. And that day, it came out very differently, and I felt like a liar. I was like, I'm a happy, optimistic. I didn't feel like I meant it anymore. And that stuck with me. I was like, whoa, I'm changing. My job is changing. Getting up every day and only thinking about sin and darkness all day long is changing me. And I don't like it. I like being happy and optimistic. Maybe I'm naive. I don't care. It's more fun. But when I realized, right, that if I ran for state auditor, all I had to do was establish the program to enact the law that was already there to promote efficiency. So, that's going to be exciting. I can get up every day and think of new ways to make government work more efficiently, right? That's awesome. What fun. So we have a program now. It's called PI, Public Innovations and Efficiencies. We named it Public Innovations and Efficiencies because that spells pie. and because it should be as popular as pie. Right? I used to joke about this. The saddest thing. Because I still joke about it, right? Because who doesn't like efficiency? You talk about partisanship and just kind of groupthink. Here's how they passed a law limiting how efficient utilities can be in the state of Iowa. Blows my mind every single time I say it. Because I joke, well, who could be against efficiency? And then I'm like, right. But the way the program works is really simple. We got the pie chart, that's the heart of the program. About a 5-page checklist, very basic, good government things you can do to save money, right? We ask government entities to fill that out every year, send it back to us, and we share that publicly so people can see how much money they're trying to save, and maybe where they need to improve. Transparency, accountability. And then we have a pie contest every year. I'm going to go out later this year and travel around and actually bring pie to our highest performing people at different local levels, different cities and counties. I think I'm coming to Cedar Rapids because I think Cedar Rapids was the biggest city to participate in the program. I think I'm going to Beaconsfield also because I think they were the smallest. So one of those trips is going to have a lot more pie involved than the other. But I want to have the pie contest to provide the incentive to continue to improve the efficiency, but also just to recognize people who are working at the local level, right? It's typically a kind of a thankless job, right? I mean, people work really hard when they're on the board of supervisors. People work really hard when they're on city council. And it's a ton of hours, and it's a big sacrifice. It's a lot of work. And I think we should recognize that more often. And the third piece, this is my favorite piece of pie, are the pie recipes. We collect money-saving ideas from all across the state. I just learned of one in my visit to Dickinson County this year. They built what I would call a courthouse chiller. Okay, we're going to nerd out for a second here. Electricity is really expensive in the daytime. If you can cool something at night, you're going to save a bunch of money rather than running your air conditioning during the day. And so what they did in Dickinson County was they built this basically like a giant underground ice machine. And they make ice at night with cheap electricity. And then in the daytime, when they're running the AC, all they have to do is blow. They don't have to do the cooling process. And so they just blow that cool air into the courthouse. 8-year ROI. they're gonna get all their money back from this project in 8 years. And then it's just gonna be saving money after that. Blue sky, right? That's amazing. 8 years is incredible. I think they came up with this on their own, right? So it's a great idea. And what we do is we collect those pie recipes and we add them to the pie chart so they get spread out to the rest of the state within a year of them even getting originated in the first place. That's awesome. Think about the amount of money that's going to save, right? And we like to add in the names of the people who come up with the ideas, right? Positive accountability, giving credit where credit is due. In addition to that, it helps other people implement the plan, right? So if Linn County wants to build a courthouse chiller and they're having a problem, we'll have the number there. I think the person's name is Chris. We'll get the phone number. But you'll be able to pick up the phone and say, hey, did you guys have to deal with this when you were building your chiller? What'd you do about it? You know, maybe they know the answer. Maybe they figured something out. Or maybe they tried something that didn't work. I don't know. But that helps more money get saved somewhere else. Also, Chris in Dickinson County gets to feel good. Isn't that nice? Right? Because if you're in this, like most people are at the local level, right, to serve your community, when you find out that some other community is benefiting from the idea that you had, you're going to be like twice as proud, right? And it's okay, that's a good kind of pride. Right? So that is definitely what I am most proud of in the office. It was really my biggest single reason for running, and now it's here. We did a good job. It's working. We had over 300 participating entities from all 99 counties in the first year. Yeah, so I'm really happy with that. What was the second part of the question?
What aren't you so happy with? What's the one thing you would change that you have done?
Boy, this is where we need Jim Lynch to not be here. I definitely make mistakes. It's not the question of whether or not I do. But again, I go back to being kind of a happy, optimistic person. When I do, I tend to try to find the silver lining for them. Okay.
What have you learned the most?
Oh, yeah.
How's that?
Okay.
Is that more politically correct in front of
No, I don't. If I could think of a real clear, you know what? Can we be off the record for a moment? He's taking it. It gets into politics, and I want to tell you something I learned without it coming across a little political, right? So I guess I'm just not going to tell you. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anybody else? All right, well, let's get Robin.